A good night of Shabbos, everyone, and wonderful to be with everybody on this fine evening as Eddie Chazan is back in the car, running as usual. Mamish, he travels, by the way, if you don't know, he travels in an armored vehicle, and that's why he's smiling. He's safe behind the plated glass. Irving Fishbaum, Baruch Ian, Shelley Zeitlin, Achman Chapler, Saba, not sure who this is, A.B. Spry, Mel Zachter, Ruven Pollack, Yitzi Muller, Aaron Swade, Ben Cian Cohen, Stephen Holtzman, Yitzi Fuchs, Dr. Guy, Rabbi Kranz, Ilya Shutman, Moshe Lehman, Abe Arbach, and I believe that this is Ruven Shannet coming on, and here we have Berish Gesseman back with us, Baruch Hashem, Gedalia Engel, Kramer, Rich Lenner. Rich, you look back at all those nights that you were away. It's nice to have you here. And Michal Avram and Reb Avram Rezepkowitz. We are holding, remember we were talking about that in a situation where a person is actively trying to get the money from the buyer, so there, if he gets half, he doesn't sell the whole thing because he's showing that he wants the money now. So we're holding 5 lines from the bottom of Ayin Zayin Amid Beis, sponsored by A.B. Spry and family for long-term nachas from his entire family, and by Michal Avram for everybody us to learn Shas with Gesund. So Baruch atah Ne'elein Melech Elam Shakol Niyeh B'dvaro. Amen. We should direct our, AB sponsored the Chumash here last night for the soldiers. What's been going on in Eretz Yisrael, to lose 5 soldiers to friendly fire. I mean, that's just, it just reminds us how we have to pray that this should be over. I mean, so our learning makes a difference, that we believe that, right? We learn that Oimdois Hoyu Ragleinu B'Sharayich Yerushalayim. It's a Gemara Makis. When our Oimdois Hoyu Ragleinu, when our feet firm in battle, when there's learning B'Sharayich Yerushalayim. So our learning definitely makes a difference as we welcome in Richard Rosenzweig and David Helfgott. Okay, so we're holding by Ahu Gavra 5 lines from the bottom of Ayin Zayin Amid Beis. Ahu Gavra de Zaman Lechamer Lechavre. What happened is that I sold to Eddie a donkey. Upasle Chad Zuzah. And Eddie I sold it to him for 1,000 zuz, and he owed me 1 zuz. But we see that the Ka'ayil v'nofik azuzah. But I was trying to get that extra zuz, I wanted that extra zuz. So Yosef Rav Ashi become an ayin ba. Rav Ashi said, over here where it's a donkey, you can't have a piecemeal sale on the donkey. So therefore, where I wanted to get that final zuz, does that hold up the sale? Ki hai gavna mai, kani oiloi kani. Does Eddie acquire the donkey or not? Amalei Rav Mordechai Rav Ashi Haki Amar Avimi Ma'agruni Mishmei de Rava. So did Avimi Ma'agruni say in the name of Rava. Zuzei kizuzei dami. Zuzah kizuzei dami. A zuz is like zuzei in halacha. 1 zuz is like many zuz. V'loi kani. He doesn't acquire it. However, Amalei Rav Achim Bereid Rav Yosef Rav Ashi V'Amina Mishmei de Rava kani. They said in the name of Rava that he does acquire it. Amalei, so he says, when Rava said that, to targem shmaitzech b'moicher sadeyu mipnei ra'asai, where the person is selling the field because it's not a good sale. It's something that's hard to get rid of. So there, where it's hard to get rid of, we assume that he wants the sale to be binding. Top line of Ayin Chesam and Aleph Pshita, Boil is Vune B'meya. If, let's say, Shelley wants to sell a field for $100. He needs $100. And he wants to sell a field for $100. However, V'loy ashkach, he can't find a buyer. V'zovin b'masayim, so he sells us a field worth $200. V'ka'ayil v'nofik azuzeh, and Shelley is really trying to get the whole payment. There, the din is loikani. There, the din is that Eddie doesn't acquire the entire field. He only acquires the money, the part of the field of the money that he sold for it, because we don't say that. We say that really Shelley didn't want to sell this field, because you see he tried to sell a field worth $100. He couldn't sell it, so regrettably he put the sale of the field of $200 up. But since he's vigorously trying to get the money, he's not in agreement to give it over to Eddie except for that which he paid for. But rather, the question is, Ella, Ibayl izvune b'meya. Now, the Gemara tells us a case that is questionable. If Shelley wanted to sell his land for $100, his smaller parcel of land, v'loit eshkach, and he couldn't find a buyer. However, the itorach hava mashkach, but it was clear that Shelley didn't go to an agent, and he didn't. If he would have troubled himself and gone to an agent, he would have found. But v'loy torach, but he didn't trouble. Okay, so he didn't trouble. V'zavim b'masayim, and he sold the one for $200. V'ka'ayil v'nafik azuzeh. He's aggressively trying to get the money. Mai, do we say k'moicher sadeo mipnei ra'asadami? Do we say that it's like selling a field because it's not such a metzia? Because otherwise, since he only needed 100, why didn't he go to an agent to sell the one that was worth 100? Or we don't say that, but rather we say that since he's aggressively looking for the money, Eddie therefore only acquires that part of what he gave Shelley the money. On that, the Gemara says, Teku, Tishbi Yataretz Kushes V'Bayis. Now the Mishnah says, Sachar es hachamar v'es hakadar. If you remember, we said you hire a donkey driver or a wagon driver who usually sells pots. That's why he's called a potter. And the person leaves in midday and leaves him hanging. So we said, Soicher alehen, you could either hire workers for more money, and the person who left you hanging has to pay the difference, or maton, or mislead him. Tell him you're going to pay him double, and then don't pay him double. So we said, ad kama soicher aleihem, till what amount could you hire workers to cover for the guy that left you hanging? I mean, it says you could hire, how much? Amar Rav Nachman ad kidei scharim, until the whole day's pay. That means that if, let's say, you were paying him $100 and he worked half the day, so you could hire for the rest of the day up to the full $100. Eisvei Rav Nachman. So Rav asked Rav Nachman, what do you mean? Only an extra $50? We learned at our bum the chamishim zuz. We learned that you could charge even 40, 50 zuz. In other words, you could pay even an exorbitant amount, 40, 50 zuz. Says the Gemara, Amalei Kitan Yahi. That's a special situation. That's a situation where the worker, when he left you hanging dry, he left his bag of tools with you. He has a very expensive bag of tools. Once you seized his bag of tools, we give you the right to charge up to, sky's the limit, until you get someone. Where his bag of tools, where his equipment bag came into your hand. Yes?
Why is the mother just set an upper limit? Why not pay what you want? What's the issue that's being?
The issue is that we're saying that the guy that dumped you has to cover it. So we want to know how much he has to cover.
Has to compensate.
Right.
I forgot that.
Now, the Gemara now gets easier. These past Gemaras were also not so unusual to say the least. So now the Gemara tells us, and those that learned with us the Chak will remember that it's not so long ago that we learned these Mishnahs in the Chak. But if let's say Yitz rents a donkey, and I specified, Yitz, you should only use the donkey on the mountains. Take the mountainous route, because my donkey is used to cool air, and I don't want it to be in the hot air of the valleys. So and he took it through the valley. Or babika, I stipulated my donkey does well in hot weather, so take it through the valley. Even if it's the same length of a journey, each are 10 mil, umesa, and the donkey died, chayiv. Yitzi is chayiv because he violated the stipulations of the contract. Now, if Yitzi rented the donkey with the stipulation that he's going to take it through the mountain, and instead he took it in the valley, but the animal didn't die because of the climate. If the animal slipped, then potter, then Yitzi is potter. However, if the animal got overheated because he took it through the valley instead of the mountain, then Yitzi is chayiv. If I stipulated he should take it through the valley, and he took it through the mountainous route, so if it slips, there it's chayiv, because I didn't want my animal going on an ascent, because I knew my animal wasn't sure-footed, and climbing up a mountain, it could very easily slip. So if he took it up the mountain, he's chayiv. If the animal overheated, well, if the animal overheated on the mountain where it's cool, it would have surely overheated in the valley, so then he's potter. But if it overheated because it got out of breath when it climbed the mountain, and I told him I didn't want it climbing, then Yitzi is chayiv. If Yitzi rents for me a donkey, he has a journey, the Evrika, and the donkey became blind. Now, you could use a pack donkey even if he's blind. It's just a little harder. So I tell Yitzi Mazlach Gorim, Oishinasis Angarya, or the king sometime presses donkeys into service. So the king drafted a donkey while it was by Yitzi. I'm alay, I don't have to provide Yitzi for another donkey. I tell him, look, it's your mazel that was Goram, and you'll have to wait till the king returns the donkey. However, Mesa Inishbara, if the animal dies, or it fractures, breaks its leg, and therefore, on no fault of Yitzi, and therefore it's useless, then I have to provide another donkey, or return him the rental fee. Now, in the Reisha, it says if he takes a donkey and he violates the contract, and it dies, he's chayiv. It doesn't make a distinction if it slipped, if it didn't slip, so why in the Reisha does it make no distinction? And the Sefer it says if it slipped, he's potter. But if it overheated, he's chayiv. So Maishna Reisha Deloy Kamaflik, there's no distinction made. Or Maishna Sefer, and why in the Sefer the Kamaflik? It does make a distinction. So the Gemara says, Imrei Debei Rabbi Yanai, Reisha Shemesa Machmas Avir. The Reisha is talking about where it died because of the quality of ear that's in the place. Therefore, if I stipulated that he shouldn't bring it on the mountain, so then the Amrina and I tell him you violated, Avira the Harkatla. It's the cold air of the mountain that killed it. Or if I stipulated that he shouldn't bring it to the valley, Vamina Avira the Bikakatla. It's the air of the valley that killed it. Rabbi Yisbar Chanina says, Kegan Shemeisa Machmas Uvtsona. It died because of it was overtaxed. You saw that the animal had a heart attack. The animal couldn't take it. So where it was overtaxed, we say, well, you violated. This animal wasn't used to climbing a mountain, or this animal wasn't used to the heat of the valley, and therefore that's why it was overtaxed. That's why it was overexhausted. Rabba says it's talking about Kigain Shekisha Nachash, where it was bitten by a snake. And the Rishonim over here debate about this, whether it's because of Tchilasa B'Pshia V'Seifa B'Ainis, but that's difficult, because if it's true Tchilasa B'Pshia V'Seifa B'Ainis, then it should be the same thing when a Huklaka. If it slipped, we said that he's potter, but why don't we say Tchilasa B'Pshia V'Seifa B'Ainis? So the way Rashi learns is that Hekisha Nachash means that Yitzi took it in a place where the snakes were more common. So therefore, if I said it should go in the valley and he took it on the mountain where snakes are more common, he's chayiv. If I said he takes it in the mountain and he took it in the valley where snakes are more common, so therefore he violated his contract and therefore he's chayiv. Reb Chia bar Abba says in the name of Reb Yochanan, no, there's something else going on over here. Something else going on over here. Reb Chia bar Abba says in the name of Reb Yochanan, Hamani Reb Meir. The Reisha of the Mishnah is going according to Reb Meir, who says any time a person violates the contract, he's chayiv. Hamani Reb Meir, the Amar Kol Ma'avir al Das Shel Baal Habayis, whoever goes against the contract of the Baal Habayis, he's a thief. And a thief is chayiv even in Eitzim. Nikra Gazlan. And Gazlan is chayiv, as Rashi says, the chayiv b'chol einsa. He's chayiv in all einsim. So then even if it would slip, he would be chayiv, because he violated the contract. So the Gemara says, okay, that's a nifty Reb Meir. Which Reb Meir in Shas holds that if you violate the das of the Baal Habayis, you're considered a Gazlan. Which Reb Meir is this? Says the Gemara as we are on the top of Daf Ayin Ches Amid Beis. Hey Reb Meir. Elaim Reb Meir did Tzava. It's the Reb Meir the dyer. Here I hired Baruch Ian. Yes, wearing such a nice blue shirt over there. So he must be a dyer, right? So look how the shirt matches the blue in the background. He has it all figured out. I'm telling you, he's a color-coded guy, right? So I tell Rameir, I tell Baruch Ian to dye my sweater red. If I give wool to Baruch Ian, for him to dye it for me red, and he dyes it black, or shacher, I tell him to dye it black, so he violated the contract. So,
Red now?
Huh? What?
Red now behind me.
Oh, very good. Very good. Now you have to hurry up and change your shirt. Now, wise guy. So that's what I tell you. With these guys, you got to watch. He changes. He's an illusionist. He changes the colors right in front of you. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Meir Aimer Noisen Loi Dmei Tzimroi. He violated what I asked him, so he has to give me back the wool. Yeah, I gave him raw wool. He has to give me back raw wool. So that means he's a thief. That's what the Gemara wants to say now. That if he violates what I wanted, the Das Balabayis, he's a thief. So he has to return me back raw wool. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Rabbi Yehuda says he has the weaker hand. Rabbi Yehuda imash shvach yeser ala yitzia. If the improvement now of this black sweater is more than the expenses, so I only have to give him the expenses. If the expenses is more than the improvement, then all I have to give him is the improvement. So the Gemara wants to say, this is the Rameir. So the Gemara says, Mimai, who says? Dilma Shani Hasam, you know why he has to pay me the raw wool? Because when he dyed it red instead of black, or black instead of red, he was kind of with shinui. He was kind of by making a change in the wool. Says he changed it with an act, and therefore, since he changed it, he acquired it, and he only has to give me back the raw wool. It's the following Rameh, the Migvas Purim, about money collected for poor people on Purim. The Tanya, Migvas Purim LaPurim, the money you collect for Purim, it has to be used for Purim. Migvas Ha'ir La'isa, the money you collect for the poor of this city has to use this city. The Aimedaktikin B'davar. You don't have to be careful which poor person you give it to. This is what we said. That's one way to learn. We'll learn that way. The Aimedaktikin B'davar means that you don't have to be careful to make sure that the person is really a deserving ani. On Purim, you can give it whoever asks. What does the Gabite Stucker do? He buys calves, v'sheichtin, and they slaughter the calves for Purim meal, v'oichlin oisan, and they eat it, v'amaiser yipo l'kishal tzedakah. And what's left over that wasn't eaten, so they sell it, and the surplus is used after Purim. Rabbi Eliezer Aimer Migvas Purim LaPurim, the collection for Purim has to be used on Purim. The ani cannot divert it and use it for anything else except for Purim, even for a shoelace for his shoe. Unless it was stipulated that way, by the townspeople. Divrei Rabbi Yaakov. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov. Sha'ama Mishim Rameir. So we see that Rameir is a champion that you cannot deviate from the Ratzon of the Balabayas. Well, Reb Shimon Gamliel is lenient and says that the Ani could use it. So the Gemara says again, that's not a riot that he's a Ganav. Dilma Hasam Nami, Dadaita de Purim Hu de Yavle. There, the people that gave the money gave it only as Mois Purim. Adaita de Mide Achrina Lo Yavle. They didn't give it for any other usage. But it's no riot that if a person goes against the contract, he's considered a Gazlan. Ella Harameir. It's the following Rameir. The Tani Reb Shimon Lazar Mishim Rameir. Hanoising dinar lo ani likach lo chalak. If let's say, AB is a charitable person. If AB gives a dinner to a poor person to buy a shirt, lo likach by talis, he can't use it to buy a talis. Talis, if he gives him money to buy a talis, lo yikach by chalak, he shouldn't buy a shirt. Mipnei shemaver al daita yishal balabayis. Says the Gemara, no. There might be a different reason. Because there people heard AB say that he's giving a talis to this poor person. And if the ani uses it to buy a shirt instead, people will suspect that AB didn't fulfill his commitment. V'dil mashani hasim da'asal l'michshadei. AB will be under suspicion to Imre Inche, because people will say, Amra planya zavnina le levusha leplani ani, that AB said he was buying a shirt for this ani, v'loi zavenla, and he didn't buy it. Inami zavlin le glima, he's buying a cloak, v'loi zavenle. So the Gemara says, yeah, but if that was the reason, then it shouldn't say because he's maver on the das of the balabayas. It should say the reason is because of suspicion. Im kein lisnei mipnei ashad, because of suspicion. My mipnei shemaver al dasha balabayis. What does it mean that he's going against the das of the balabayis? Shmami no mishim deshanihu, because he's deviating, and the ani cannot deviate from what AB gave him the money for. Because if you deviate, nikra gazel, you're considered a thief. Now let's go to the case of where the animal becomes blind. Hasaycher es hachamar, the evrika, and it becomes blind. Actually gets a speck in the eye and becomes blind. My evrika. So that I told you one pshat. But there's actually two pshatim in Ve'evrika. Now, when it says Nurisa light, this is the way that the Gemara talks all the time. It's a lishna ma'alimya. It's a euphemism. Like when we call a person loyalena who's blind, saginar. Saginar literally means one that has much light. Actually, it's one that cannot see light. But it's a euphemism. That's why we call on Shabbos afternoon, the kiddush that we make, we call it Kiddusha Rabbah. Now, Kiddush Rabbah is a euphemism, because really it's only a Kiddush to Rabbana. We don't say any bracha. And there's no bracha in the Kiddush. On Friday night there's a bracha. Mekadosh Shabbos, Asher Kitchanu Mitzvayis Mitzivanu. So why do we call the Kiddush Shabbos afternoon Kiddush Rabbah? So it's a euphemism. It really means the light Kiddush. I have a favorite pshat that I say. My veteran Talmidim will have heard this already, as we welcome in Stephen Ganak joining us. Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg has come, and Mo Kushner, great to have you, Mo Kushner. Mo, when are you turning 98?
Now, we'll need another year.
Now you're 97, right?
Right.
Baruch Hashem. Im Yetz Hashem till Mashiach.
But I have a source, my brother, who I can't mention because he's afraid of 9/11. And on the 24th, he'll be 100.
Wow. Well,
I have an older brother.
so you're the baby.
I'm the baby. Yeah.
He's a 97-year-old baby. You don't suck your thumb anymore, do you?
No. Thank you, Al.
I have a relative who's 62 that still sucks his finger. He never got out of sucking his finger. And he's a very big Talmud Chacham. He's a very big. And he says, listen, I like it. I like it. Anyway, this is a person who learned Shas many times. He's sucking his finger. So it's a raya that sucking your finger is not a chesaron. Yes. Anyway, there's a pshat that I like to say, although we have a busy night tonight, I'm going to say it anyway. There's a big shaila that Hasidim of Hasidic persuasion. Does anybody here make Kiddush on Schnapps? Dahlia, you make Kiddush on Schnapps? Dahlia Shabbos? No. So I don't make Kiddush on Schnapps.
That's the Taz that says you could do that, right?
Yes. So, but the question is why?
Oh.
Do you ever see somebody marry off a girl with schnapps? You ever see somebody used by a bris schnapps? You ever see somebody used by a pidyon a ben schnapps? Of course not. So what happens by Kiddush using schnapps? Friday night you're not going to use schnapps. So the teretz that they say is that since it's a lenient Kiddush, and there were places that they didn't have wine, so they were makel to use Chamar Medina, which was schnapps. As a matter of fact, they bring down that the Divrei Chaim, when they had wine, he made Kiddush on schnapps and on wine.
Oh.
And he did it on schnapps because the minig of saying to be ordained. But you have to be careful because you got to do the schnapps first. Because once you make the wine, then you can't make the bracha on the schnapps because the bracha of Bar Priagafen pat is the schnapps. It's a halacha with a Bar Priagafen, the pat is all other liquids. So I wanted to say pshat why you make kiddush on whiskey. Because it says that how did Hashem create the world? Ba'asara mamoros nivru ha'olam. He created the world with 10 utterances. Therefore, what do we, when we rest on Shabbos, Zeich that Hashem rested. What did he rest from? He rested from talking. So we want to be mekadesh the Shabbos with the bracha, shahakol niya bidvarai. Everything came about from his word. That's mamish the whole inyan of Kiddush Shabbos, that Hashem rested from talking. Anyway, okay. Rava says that what does it mean that the animal was hivrika? Rava says avzekes. The animal became weak at the feet. Now, what does it mean, weak at the feet? So the Rishonim tell us the animal had like a parasite, worms in the feet, and it made the animal weak at the feet. Now, it still was able to work, but it moved a lot slower, and the owner could say, "Mazloch garam, your mazel caused it. I don't have to replace the animal." Now, once the Gemara brings down the subject of avzekes, so avzekes means a bug infestation. It also refers to moths. So the Gemara happens to tell us a story. How the Amalahu, a man said to the one in charge of the king's wardrobe, a minister that was in charge of the king's wardrobe, avzekes b'milsa de malka. there are moths in the king's wardrobe. Amrulei b'mai, betlei kesef or betlei dahav. Is it in the silver garments, which mean linen garments, or is it in the golden garments, the woolen garments? Iked amrei betlei kesef, he said it was in the linen garments, and then he knew he was lying, because linen is not infested with moths, and therefore v'katlei, they killed him. Iked amrei betlei dahav amar, it was the woolen garments. Woolen garments are infested with moths, v'shavkua, and then they let him be. Oy shenasis angaria, or if it was pressed in the service of the king, so then you could tell him, sorry, but it's your mazel that caused it to be temporarily drafted. That's only if it was drafted momentarily. It was something that, it was needed for a short time and it was returned. But if the animal is taken away permanently, so then that's not any different than if the animal dies or if it broke its leg, that the owner has to provide another animal. So that Rav's explanation fits with why it's different than if the animal died. Whether it's taken away or not taken away, whether it's going to be returned right away or it's not going to be returned right away, Shmuel says there's a little bit of a difference. Im b'derech halicha nitla, if the way it worked is the king, the way it worked is the king drafted it into service until he sees another person. So then he gives back the donkey and takes somebody else's donkey. So im b'derech halicha nitla, if it's in the way that he was traveling, listen, then he has to make do. He's traveling in that direction anyway. He has to make do until the king finds another person to take it away from. However, but if he has to go out of his way, then even according to Shmuel, he has to return him a donkey. So now, having heard this machlokes Rav and Shmuel, so the Gemara asks a kasha. Meisvei hasoicher es hachamar, if a person rented a donkey, vihivrika, and the donkey either became blind, or the donkey became imbecilic. And look, a person could still use a pack donkey, even if it's blind, and even if it's a bit imbecilic. But Mesa Oishenasis Angaria, if it died or if it was pressed in service, Chayv Lamed Lechamar. Now that's a stira to our Mishnah. So Bishlam and Rav Lekash, according to Rav, it's not a stira, because Rav will say, when are you Chayv to replace it? When it's an Angaria Sheina Chayzeres, when it was taken away by the king permanently. So Bishlam and Rav Lekash can buy Angaria Chayzeres. If it's temporary, he could say, Harishal Chalafanecha, sorry, you'll have to wait till he returns it. Can buy Angaria Sheina Chayzeres, but if he doesn't return it, if the king doesn't return it, so then it's like it died. El Shmuel Kasha. So the Gemara says, no, Shmuel will say that one is talking about where it's going, where they're going the same direction, and one is talking about when they're not going in the same direction. El Shmuel Kasha. V'chiteim El Shmuel Nami Lo Kasha, because kan b'derech halichasa nitla. Our Mishnah that says that you could say that you have to struggle with it, that's where at least he's going in the direction with the king. But if he's going in a different direction, then you have to replace him, another animal. But it says Muhammad Iktani Seifa, Reb Shimon makes that chilek. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Aimer im b'derech halichasa nitla. If you're going in that direction, the one who rented it to you could say, look, you'll have to struggle until you get the animal back. Vim la'av, and if not, chayv la'am loy chamor. Michlal the Tanakama loy shani loy. That means that the Tanakama doesn't make this distinction. So Shmuel says, okay, so I hold like Reb Shimon Gamliel. Like Shmuel, lam ikar Reb Shimon. I hold like Reb Shimon Elazar. Lam ikar Reb Shimon Elazar. Another Amrei Reb Shimon Elazar. Or it's not a machlokes. It's just a perusha kamafarish. Iba yisayim a kula Reb Shimon Elazari. V'chesurei mechsera. It's a missing text. V'achi ketani. Hasaycher esachamar. If you rent a donkey, v'evrika, and it becomes blind, or nishtatus, or it becomes imbalanced, amalai, you could tell the one renting, you have to struggle with it. Meisa, if it dies, oishinasis angaria, or is pressed into the service of a king, chayv lahamad loy chamar. Ba medvar mamurim. When do we say that? Shaloi b'derech halichas it. We say that when it was taken and it's going, and the king is going in a different direction from you, so you can't even follow the king until he takes it away from someone else. But if you could just tag along with the king until somebody else's donkey is available, I'm alive, the one who rented it to you could say, Hari shel cholafanecha, divrei Reb Shimon Elazar, this is the position of Reb Shimon Elazar, Shei Reb Shimon Elazar, Aimer, im b'derech hilucha nitla, if it was going in the same way, I'm alive, shel cholafanecha. V'im lav, and if not, chayiv lahamad loy chamar. Says the Gemara, but umi matzis mukmis lak Reb Shimon Elazar. Can you say this is going like Reb Shimon Elazar? If you rent a donkey and it becomes blind or it becomes imbalanced, but if you rent a donkey to ride on it, if it became blind or it became an imbecile, you have to replace it. So in the Reisha can't be Reb Shimon Elazar. Says the Gemara, there's a difference between renting it to ride or renting it as a pack donkey. To rent it as a pack donkey, you could use it even if it's blind or a little demented. It's not going to throw you off the bridge. It's not going to throw you off the mountaintop. It's different if you want to ride it. You ride it, then you can say, Rich is not very happy about riding a demented donkey, right? He's not happy about riding on the cliff, near the cliff, a blind donkey. And Amar Rapapa says, "V'klei skulchas kilirkav alehadami." If it's to transport glass, it's like riding on it. You have delicate glass. You don't want a blind or demented donkey to transport your glass. Now, Rabbi say, we are going to learn a chok. It's pretty. I had pretty big atzlacha today. Actually, I'll tell you, today was an anomaly. I had an early morning bris for my good friend Yitzi Kurtzer here in Lakewood, who made a bris for his grandson, and I had extra time this morning to prepare, so I was able to do an entire chok besides the daf and the Mishnah Yaimis and the other stuff. So we need the green screen, and we did the Mishnah already.
I'd rather ride a demented donkey than an electric car.
What? Matzah Shabbos, we made 10:40, right? No, 10:20? Yeah, 10:20. Matzah Shabbos 10:20, and next week the daf is throughout the week 8:40. So Matzah Shabbos is 10:20, and the daf throughout the week is 8:40. Okay, and now we're going to do a very fascinating chok.